What's good, everybody? I'm Uriah, co-host of the 50, 40, 90 interview series from NBA Now and Then, the greatest comparisons. We are currently in the NBA offseason with the draft ending a few weeks ago and free agency in full swing. I'm with someone right now who is no stranger to, say, old school basketball, someone who writes books about the lives of some of basketball's most celebrated players from back in the day. Our guest on the show has been with us before. We are here with the author, Paul Knepper. How are you, Paul? Welcome back.
I'm good, Uriah. It's great to be back on.
Quick reminder for you guys listening out there to please click and subscribe. You can listen to our interviews for free. If you want to support us so we can keep bringing you top-notch guests and more, please consider becoming an NBA Now and Then member on Patreon or on Apple. So let's get back to Paul. Paul is an author whose debut biography, The Knicks of the 90s, Ewing, Oakley, Starks, and the Brawlers. His newest biography, Moses Malone, The Life of a Basketball Prophet, will be released this fall. Paul, let's get it out the way. When is this book coming out? And tell us a little bit about how that process got started.
Yeah, so the book will be available November 1st. It'll be out. It's available for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whatever. Encourage everyone to support your local bookstores too. I think the seed was planted for this project a while ago, 10, 12 years ago. As you know, Uriah, I'm a big fan of basketball history. I know a lot about the history of the game, and I knew relatively little about Moses Malone. You know, I just kind of knew the broad strokes. I knew he was one of the greatest players ever, but knew very little about him considering how good he was. And actually thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to go on Amazon, I'm going to buy a Moses biography and read up on him. And I was shocked to find there was no Moses biography. I think that kind of planted the seed. It wasn't until I can't say I said at that point, oh, I'm going to write one, but right. You know, it was years later. I think that kind of, you know, germinated in my mind. And ultimately I said, you know what, this guy needs a book about him. I think there are other people who want to know more about him as I do. And I'm going to write it. Yeah.
Well, growing up as a Sixers fan, I remember falling in love with basketball around the same time that Moses Malone helped the 76ers win a championship. So this book, for me and some of my other guys on the team, we are definitely going to support you and buy this because, like you said, Moses, I think he has not been given his just due. You know, like you said, there aren't many biographies out there about him, and you decided to pick up that responsibility. My next question has to do with his personality. Moses was a workhorse. He was no nonsense. He did not like the spotlight, and he was famously quiet. He was private. How did you go about uncovering some of the more personal sides of his life for your book?
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously it's interviews. It's talking to all the people that knew him, back from people he grew up with in Petersburg, Virginia, to teammates, to friends from off the court, to his agent and family members and everybody. I found, somewhat surprisingly, I think people really wanted to talk about him because of what you mentioned. I think there was, I can't tell you how many people use the word misunderstood to me. There are so many people who knew him well, who thought that he was misunderstood publicly. And I agree with that. And so I think a lot of them wanted to set the record straight, maybe even more so because he's gone. You know, Moses died about 10 years ago now.
Right.
So I think a lot of his friends and family wanted to present him in a more positive light than many sports writers did during his career. And so there was that. And then, you know, just the interview process, the research process, you try and establish trust with the people you're talking to. And I had a few of his very close friends who I developed, you know, I would say are my friends now and developed good relationships with. And I think they saw that I came from a genuine place and a place of integrity. And I wanted to tell his story right. I didn't have any hidden agendas or anything. And so right. I think, you know, you develop a relationship with sources and they tend to trust you and open up a little more. But as I said, I think, you know, he was loved by a lot of people, and I think they feel kind of, as you said, he's underappreciated, not talked about enough, especially, I think as time went on and more so, you know, some of his friends are like, yeah, I see these lists, greatest centers ever, the greatest players ever, the greatest rebounders ever. And like, why isn't my boy's name mentioned, you know?
Right.
And so they want to correct that too. So I think that helped.
With so much detail going into someone's life, especially someone who's a former MVP, champion, But let's go back to Moses Malone's high school journey. He skipped college, and I'll let you touch upon that a little bit more. What stood out to you about his journey and how it led to his ultimate legacy?
That's probably the greatest part of his legacy is he was the first modern day player to go straight from high school to pros. I underestimated how difficult that was. I think really when you think about whatever walk of life, whatever field it is, trailblazers often face a tremendous backlash. And when he did that in 1974, it had only been a few years since guys were leaving college early to go to the pros. Not that many people had done it yet. The guys that did it after 2 or 3 years. And that was still like a new idea that people weren't really comfortable with. So now you have this kid jumping straight from high school to pros. And a lot of people were skeptical that whether he could do it. A lot of people thought it's too big a jump physically, athletically, skill wise, maturity wise, that a lot of people assumed he would fail. And what I discovered was a lot of people wanted him to fail. By skipping college, he posed a massive threat to an enormous economic system that is NCAA basketball.
Wow.
And the coaches and administrators did not like that. There was a tremendous backlash, and there was a racial component to that as well. It wasn't just anybody upending an economic system. It was a young, uneducated black man from the South who was upending this economic system. And that pissed a lot of people off. He faced a lot of attacks, again, much of them racial in nature. And so I think it was harder than him than a lot of people realize, a lot harder for him than a lot of people realize. And, we've seen, you and I and younger fans have seen a generation of guys who went straight from high school to pros with the Kobe's and LeBron and KG and McGrady and all that. But he did it 20 or more years earlier, and it just wasn't accepted then, and it was frowned upon. And the NBA wasn't happy about it either, because the NBA viewed college basketball as a free farm system, basically, a place where talent could be developed for free, and not just talent, but brand recognition. Think back in the day, guys like, you mentioned my Knicks book, like Patrick Ewing was such a huge brand when he came to the NBA because he'd been a prominent national figure as a college basketball player for 4 years.
Right.
And so the NBA really benefited from that as well. So they weren't happy about it. NBA people, gave Moses a lot of crap about it. It showed actually really great courage and perseverance and character for him to make that jump and overcome those obstacles and the scorn of many people and be as successful as he was.
Some people don't consider Virginia like the South because it's not the deep South like Georgia or Alabama. But I could see the racial tensions especially during that time in the 60s and 70s. But the thing that really resonates with me, what you talked about, was the huge machine of NCAA basketball. And that's a great point that I can't wait to dive into when you spell it out in your book. But I want to talk about any myths or misconceptions about Moses. You alluded earlier, he's very quiet, right? And some of his family members said, oh, he was misunderstood. What are some things that stood out during your research that made you say, wow, this myth this is not right. Like, this is not what the public has known Moses for.
Yeah, I think, he came across as gruff, standoffish, which was legitimate. He had no interest in talking to the media. He didn't trust the media. He had no interest at all in being a celebrity or being famous. Just none, and we've seen, I think Jokic is like that now. Tim Duncan was like that, but most superstars are not. Most superstars are like, give me the spotlight and I want to get all the endorsement deals I can and all of that. He wasn't about any of that. And I think, gruff might be the best word. A lot of people covered would say he was flat out rude. And so I think a couple of myths are, one, that he was unintelligent. And I think some of that stemmed from the initial reaction to him skipping college.
Right.
Moses had a speech impediment. He had kind of a very deep voice, a weird cadence. He was difficult to understand.
Yeah. And
so when you combine the lack of education, the difficulty understanding him, his unwillingness to speak, it all contributed to this conception that he was unintelligent. And he was actually very intelligent. Julius Erving said that Moses Malone had a brilliant basketball mind. And I talked to a lot of players, some Hall of Famers, who just marveled at his basketball IQ, his intelligence off the court, how witty he was. And then the other misconception is that he was this unfriendly guy. And he certainly was to the press. At times he could be to fans. But he had a wonderful sense of humor. Mm-hmm. He was a very supportive teammate. All his teammates at every level loved him. He was very humble, down to earth. The guy won 3 MVP awards, and he acted like he was like the 12th man on the bench. That was just his demeanor. But as I said, he had a great sense of humor, and people liked being around him. He had a good heart. He was, a couple people referred to him as a gentle giant. He took a lot of players, younger players, under his wing, most notably Olajuwon and Charles Barkley.
Yep.
And so the image of him as this standoffish guy was very much a public thing. But behind the scenes, when the cameras weren't there, he was actually very warm and friendly and endearing to teammates.
The mention of Dr. J and some of the other teammates that I'm sure in the book you will reveal. I grew up watching this. This was my team. The Knicks for you is what the Sixers are for me. And I remember watching Moses, marveling at his work ethic, which showed in the game. Even though he was not the most defined muscular player, even though he was not as quick or as fast as maybe some other players, he just had this lunch pail mentality, and he would go to town in the paint, grabbing every rebound. Let's talk about his impact. And you can attest to this. Give us Moses Malone's impact on or off the court when it comes to his playing days.
Yeah, I mean, on the court, he was, I could tell in the book, he was the best player in the world for 5 years. Okay. Really from 1978 to 1983, I think he was the best player in the world. And this is a time where you have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is playing, Dr. J is playing, Magic and Bird are in the early parts of their career, and Moses was the best. Over that 5-year period, he won 3 MVP awards in 5 years. Wow. He's the only guy to win MVP awards in back-to-back years for different teams. He was the best player, as you know, he was the best player, MVP, finals MVP on one of the greatest teams of all time, the 82-83 Celtics.
Right.
76ers. I'm sorry, Uriah. Sixers.
Yeah, don't ever let that slip out again, man.
And, totally he's widely regarded as the greatest offensive rebounder ever. So on the court, I mean, he was just an absolute beast. In terms of impact, his legacy, even on the court, I think a big part of his legacy is how many people he influenced and, again, mentored. Charles Barkley has said repeatedly, the one person most responsible for his success in the NBA is Moses Malone.
Right.
That's a big statement. Moses Malone taught him how to work hard. And there's great stuff in the book about that. He had a huge impact. When Hakeem Olajuwon went to the Hall of Fame, he said, I would not be here if it was not for Moses Malone. He was a mentor to Iverson. He was an assistant coach for a bit with the Sixers when Iverson was there, and Iverson really looked up to him. Those are just the Hall of Famers, but there are countless others who he mentored and brought along and taught them the ropes when they got into the league. So that's another way he had a major impact. And then off the court, I think we think of the 21st century, or maybe the LeBron era starts this era of player empowerment, right? But it didn't just start then. It was a progression, right? In the 50s and 60s, the players had no power, zero power. So player empowerment, I mean, that starts really in 1954 when Bob Cousy forms the Players Association. And they start to argue for a pension and for things like that. And it continues through Oscar Robertson and his lawsuit, which brought about free agency. I mean, that's player empowerment, right? I mean, Michael Jordan taking control of his image and brand and expanding the game through his own unique branding, that's player empowerment. I think Moses fits in that lineage. I think him saying, you know what? Yeah, I know everybody's always gone to college. I know that's what everybody wants me to do. I know that's the system that's in place, but I don't give a damn about the system. I'm going to get mine. I'm going to do what's best for me, and I'm going to skip college and go pro. And a couple guys followed right after, and then years later, a lot more followed. So I think that's an important part of his legacy and his impact off the court is that impact on player empowerment.
It's so crazy how you go back to those decades and these young players now making $50 million a year or $60 million a year. They have no idea. I'm sure they do, but just don't take it for granted. because
Yeah, I
players
think
like Moses and Doc, like they never really got the money like today's money. And
I think a lot don't get that. There's a lot of people that helped pave that way. It didn't happen overnight.
yeah. My last question about your book on Moses Malone is, someone goes to the bookstore, they're browsing, and they see, wow, a book on the shelf about Moses. I haven't seen one before. When they pick it off the shelf and they're browsing through and maybe they read the intro, by the time they finish reading your book, because we know they're going to buy it, what do you hope that people take away from your book about Moses' life in basketball?
I dedicated this book to my son, and the dedication page says, "For Brody, forge your own path like Moses." And I think that's what I would like people to take away from that. And that's not specific to basketball. It's Moses had a tremendous belief in himself. He stayed true to himself. Going back to high school, like Moses never went to parties. He didn't go to clubs. He didn't drink. He didn't smoke. Moses was out on the playground by himself, practicing free throws at 3 a.m, just all night. And then, a lot of people thought he was crazy for skipping college and going to the pros. A lot of people rooted against him, as I noted. There were a number of obstacles in his way. But I think, that would be the lesson I would hope people take from Moses is stay true to yourself, follow your heart, stay true to yourself. Don't get swayed by what other people say. Don't get swayed by what's popular. Don't be limited by the way things have been done before or the way they've always been done. Have the belief in yourself and the courage and the vision to pursue a new path. And then you got to work your ass off to accomplish it, right? But that'll be it. Just staying true to yourself and believing in yourself and following your own vision.
Wow. Sounds good to me. I definitely probably going to pre-order it as soon as I stop interviewing you. So I'll definitely want to do that. All right. So last time you were with us, Paul, we took you in the NBA draft time machine. Are you ready to re-enter for season 2?
Let's do it, Uriah. I'm ready. These are tough. You come up with, I got to give you guys credit. You come up with really, really good comps. Like they're very thought-provoking. It's like very few do I look at and be like, oh, definitely that guy.
Well, there's one in particular I can't wait to hear about. I think you know who I'm going to go with. But let's get in the time machine.
And now, get ready for the NBA Now and Then Draft Time Machine.
All right, Paul. In this little exercise, 2 NBA stars from different eras are in the same draft class. For fun, if you were guaranteed that both players could have a decade-long career of equally good health, who would you pick? All right, these are all comparisons that we covered for Season 2 NBA Now and Then. Paul, you can go back and listen to his responses to the comparisons from Season 1. But let's get right to it. We're going to go first off with the potential face of the NBA, but he doesn't seem to want it. We're going to start with Anthony Edwards and Dwayne Wade. Who would you go with?
I would take D Wade because I think he's more skilled. And I mean, love, like everyone, love Ant, tremendous talent. And we haven't seen the best of him yet. So it's hard in that we don't know what is he, how old is he now?
Probably 24, probably 24,
yeah.
23, 24.
I mean, he's at 28, he's going to be significantly better. And so we don't know what that's going to look like. But I think, when you compare those two guys, I think D Wade was better quicker, by his second year, he was a monster at a level that Ant hasn't even reached yet, I think. I think ball handling was better with Wade. I think he had a higher IQ. I think he just had a little better feel for the game, running the offense, knowing when to take over, knowing when not to. I think that's something that Ant is still learning and struggles with a little bit at times, when to defer, when not to. I think Wade was more efficient, particularly in the mid-range. Ant's a better three-point shooter for sure, but I think Wade was more efficient in the mid-range. And so I think Wade was an underrated defender.
He was a very good defender.
Yeah,
I
think as is Ant. I think they're comparable defensively. So I think offensively, I think Wade was probably a little better passer. As I said, a little more skilled. I think a little better ball handler, a little better passer, a little better mid-range shooter, and a little higher IQ. And so I would give the edge to Wade, with the caveat that we don't know what Ant's ceiling is yet.
Fair enough. So this next comparison, They did play in the same era, and we typically don't do this, but I know you, and I know what you're going to say, but I want to hear you justify it. So if you had a choice between going back to the 80s and you had a draft where you had to pick either Patrick Ewing or David Robinson, who would you go with?
I may surprise you here, you're right.
Oh, no, really? No way.
Yeah.
Say it ain't so.
It breaks my heart to do it, but I think I would take Robinson.
Okay.
The one thing I'm thinking now, though, is Patrick's knees after a few years in the league weren't the same. Let me break it down. Patrick was a better shooter. Robinson was quicker. So Robinson was better in transition. He got up. I mean, a few big men ever got up and down the floor like he could. And he had a really good... I think Patrick was more skilled offensively, but Robinson was very effective at using his quickness to get to the basket. Led the league in scoring one year, which Patrick never did. At defense, I think Robinson was a better defender because I think, he was quicker.
Okay.
And especially if you played in today's game, I think he'd have a much easier time or would be much better at switching and guarding perimeter players. I don't think Patrick had the lateral mobility to do that as well. So believe it or not, I think I would take Robinson.
Okay.
In a close one.
All right. Well, just for all your buddies who love the Knicks and all the Knicks fans,
I'm going to get a lot of crap for this.
I forgive him right now. I put him on the spot. But I had to. Let's go with Jason Kidd and Chris Paul next. Who would you go with?
Yeah, this is another one I struggle with. I think I would take Chris Paul ultimately. I mean, the most notable difference is the shooting. And Kidd did as good a job as anybody I've ever seen at turning himself from a bad shooter into like a pretty good.
He got better.
At the end of his career, he was a good spot-up three-point shooter. He couldn't shoot on the move. He couldn't shoot off the dribble, anything like that. But spot-up threes, he would knock them down.
Yeah.
And that was never would have imagined that when he came in the league. But CP3 was clearly a better shooter, both from three, definitely in the mid-range. I mean, CP3 was a killer in the mid-range. CP3 was a great passer. I think Kidd was a better passer. I think he was a better rebounder. He was definitely a better rebounder.
Yeah, a little height to him.
Yeah. People rave about CP3's defense, but to me, Kidd was just as good.
Right.
Although CP3 had a great ability to kind of body up and hold his own against bigger players.
Yeah.
They were both great defenders. In part, they just had such great instincts, to step into the passing lane and things like that, and seeing things before they'd happen. Kidd was, I think, the better transition player. I mean, that was really where he thrived. He was incredible. But ultimately, I give the edge to CP3 because of just the half-court offense. I wouldn't say Kidd was a great half-court offensive player. They're close, but I think ultimately I'll take CP3 because of the offensive threat that he posed in the half-court.
Let's go to two big men now, two centers or power forward, depending on the time period that he played. We're going to go with Tim Duncan or Nikola Jokic. If you had to pick in the same draft, who are you going with?
This is killer, Uriah. This is killer. Not the least of which because I love both of those guys. I love their games, and I love them, frankly. Part of what attracted me to Moses Malone was the fact that there's a chapter in my book called Reluctant Superstar.
Yep.
That chapter could easily be in a book about Jokic and Duncan. And I like that. I like their humility. I like that they just want to play the game and they're not interested in all the other BS. Breaking it down, offensively, I think Jokic is a superior offensive player and Duncan is a far superior defensive player.
Right.
Jokic was a better passer. Duncan could pass, but Jokic was a better passer.
Much better passer.
Yeah. He definitely had more range on his shot. I mean, Duncan didn't shoot threes. I think if he came along now, he probably would, but I don't know that it would work as well. He had a pretty flat shot. I don't know how well that would have translated to threes. He was Tim Duncan, and he was going to work at it, and he would have got good at it if he needed to, but he's not shooting like 40% like Jokic. I don't know, Jokic, I mean, offensively, we've seen very few players like him, the way he could just command an offense.
Very few.
And handle the ball. But then I think of defense, and he's a liability on defense. I mean, I think he's a bad defender. And Duncan was a fantastic defender. Whew.
You got to pick somebody.
I'm gonna pick Duncan because I think there was no weakness there.
Yeah,
you couldn't attack him because Jokic you could attack. You could game plan around. Let's go at Jokic.
Yeah,
you weren't going at Duncan. I don't know. I think Duncan could have scored more too if he wanted to.
If he wanted to, sure.
Yeah, I think he was a team first guy, and early on he played with Robinson and then Ginobili and Parker, and he's had more help. I don't want to get into the championships because he's clearly had more help than Jokic has, a lot more. I mean, Robinson's a Hall of Famer.
Tony Parker,
Manu, both Hall of Famers. Kawhi Leonard's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Kawhi, yeah, I forgot about it.
Jokic hasn't played with any Hall of Famers. He doesn't play with any. I saw recently something about how, of the top players ever, he has by far the least. I think he hasn't played with an All-Star.
Nope.
He hasn't played with an All-Star.
Nope, he has not.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'll take Duncan by a smidge because of the defense.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's one of the few comparisons that one of my team guys, had to really convince me on, because the offense and defensive components to their game are so drastically different. Jokic with his passing and Duncan with his defense. But you started out with the thing that drove it home, which is they're both reticent, quiet superstars.
Yeah.
And they don't like the spotlight. And they're both impactful, and they both have an impact for their teams, and they are both champions. So that being said, you're going with Duncan. We have another comparison. Who would you go with? Two big men. We have Bam Adebayo from Miami, but also from Miami and Charlotte, Alonzo Mourning. Who would you pick over who?
Yeah, this is another. Again, you guys are just the masters with this. This is a great comparison. Very similar. The games are somewhat different in somewhat different eras, but obviously defensive first, centers. I think offensively, Bam is a little more skilled. Bam's a better passer than Zoe. He's a little better ball. He doesn't do a lot with the ball, but he is a better ball handler. Zoe had just that, I'm going to just lower my shoulder and just drive through you, go to the basket thing, which was effective. I mean, don't get me wrong. Defensively, both two great defenders. They could both really anchor a defense. I give the defensive edge to Zoe because I think he was a little more of a shot blocker.
Yes.
A little more of a rim protector. And again, it's hard because the game has changed, and now Bam is very good again with switching and going on the perimeter some, which big men have to do now, which didn't have to do when Zoe played. So it's hard. It's almost some of these. It's almost like, well, what era are we playing in? If we're playing in the '90s, I'm taking Zoe because of the physicality. If we're playing in the '20s, I'm taking Bam. I'll, again, by a very slight margin, I will take Zoe. I think he just had an energy to him, offensively and defensively, that I think elevated everyone a little bit. I think he was a slightly better defensive player, and of all the strengths that those two guys have, the biggest one was Zoe's defense. So I'll take Zoe.
Yeah, and Zoe had a little bit of a jumper, mid-range jumper too.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to go now to two speedy guards. One plays for the Sixers today. The other, unfortunately, had some really terrible knee problems. Who would you go with? Would you go with Tyrese Maxey, or would you pick John Wall?
Yeah, speedy is the right word there. I think Wall, believe it or not, was actually probably even faster.
Okay.
I think he was a little faster. I think he was more athletic.
Definitely. He could get up.
He could get up. He just seemed more athletic, more bigger, almost like a Dwayne Wade build, longer. I think was more of a point guard. Was more of a
playmaker.
Playmaker, initiator. I think
definitely.
Maxey's kind of a tweener. He could play the point. They run pick and roll with him, definitely. But I don't think that comes as naturally to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a little short for a shooting guard.
6'3", 6'2", 6'3".
Yeah. Defensively, Wall was pretty good. Wall got a lot of steals. And Maxey could hold his own defensively. He's not a great defender by any means, but he's okay.
Who's a better shooter?
I think Maxey's a better shooter.
Okay.
I think he's better from three. He didn't have a very good shooting year this year, but I think Maxey's a better shooter.
Mm-hmm.
I think a problem this year is with Embiid hurt, with Paul George not playing well, Maxey had to carry more of the load than he probably should.
Got a lot of double teams last year.
Yeah. Which is why I'll go with Wall, because I think Wall was, again, like the better playmaker and a little more comfortable playing that lead role.
Okay.
So I'll go with Wall.
Yeah, John Wall was also a tremendous passer. And when I was doing the research for it, he actually idolized Magic Johnson growing up. So if you look at his passing, passing technique,
running that pick and roll and getting into the paint and dishing it out, he did that a lot more effectively than Maxey does.
So the next comparison, this next player is having a rough time in the spotlight, with his personal life. We have Zion Williamson. All that personal stuff aside, we're talking about talent, and these two are crazy talented. Zion Williamson or Charles Barkley. 10 years of good health. Keep that in mind. Who would you go with?
Man, the Zion thing is tricky because, I don't know. I just read a really good article the other day about Joel Embiid. I don't know if you saw it on ESPN.
Yeah, I saw it.
I forget the name of the writer, but a really good, really in-depth piece of his whole career. And at the crux of it is this issue of, is he, clearly he has health issues, there's no doubt about that. But there's also been this suggestion that he's lazy and isn't always committed, isn't always in as good a shape as he could be. It's hard to figure out which is which, right? Are you lazy, or is your foot really bothering you?
Yeah.
And you know, there's a little bit of that with Zion, and that I don't know exactly what Zion is. Obviously, he has had a lot of injuries. He's also been very overweight in his career. It sounds like he hasn't been the greatest teammate. And the crazy thing is, all those things I just said about Zion were said about Barkley.
Hello. Yeah, exactly.
There's a great story in my book about how Barkley goes to Moses early in his career and said, Moses, like, why aren't I playing in his rookie year? And Moses looks him up and down and says, you're fat and lazy. And Moses works with them and helps him get rid of that weight. But similar label to Zion in that way. It's also tough to assess Zion because we haven't seen the best of Zion, certainly as a player, and we haven't seen him healthy for a long stretch of time.
Right.
All that being said, I think Charles is a better shooter. Zion probably the better athlete, but young Charles is a crazy athlete.
Yes.
They're both a little undersized for what they do.
Yep.
But made up for it with athleticism
and their strength. They're pretty strong guys.
Absolutely. Both weren't very good defenders. I have to take Charles just because I've seen him be the best player on a team that went to the finals, and there is some universe in which maybe that could be the case for Zion, or could have been the case without injuries.
Right.
But I just don't know. I just don't know if he could have got to that level. And a lot of that is mental, where if mentally he could have been the leader of a team and carried the load for a whole season and led them, to the finals or to a deep playoff run. I hope we get to see that. I hope we still do.
Yeah.
But in the absence of that, if nothing else, just kind of that mental edge to Barkley.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, Charles Barkley, there's that famous video of him in the 80s. I think it's like a overcast day at a track. And Charles Barkley is kind of like running with the hoodie on, and Moses is running next to him. They're training, obviously. So without Moses' tutelage, who knows what Barkley's career would have been like. But yeah, and Zion, I'm big on Zion. I really love, obviously, his dunks, his athleticism. Both guys can really finish in the paint. Like, I would say the best of the people in their generation. Let's move on. 2 point guards. But these 2 point guards can both score and distribute as good as each other, I would say. But it's tough because Trae Young down in Atlanta hasn't really gotten... I mean, he got to the Eastern Conference Finals once or twice. But Tim Hardaway, during his era, he was pretty popular, but also effective guard at his position. But if you had to choose between Trae Young and Tim Hardaway, who would you go with?
Yeah, Hardaway, man. Hardaway's one of those guys, it's somewhat generational in that to grow up in his era and to see how good he was. And there was really kind of like two different versions of Hardaway, in that like early 90s, Run TMC, Golden State. He was so quick, so quick the whole. And with the killer crossover, was like bam, almost like Iverson level, where he crossed you up and he was gone. He tore his ACL in like 94, maybe around there, and he wasn't quite the same player after that.
Right.
He actually bulked up a lot when he went to Miami, but still was great more on just intelligence and guile, and he learned to use his strength to create space, and was still a great player in those late 90s Heat teams. But Trae is, he gets a bad rap sometimes too, I think. Incredibly skilled, obviously, ball handler, can get a shot off whenever he wants. His shooting percentages could be better.
Yeah.
I think Hardaway is a better defender. I think he kind of dug in a little more on that end, and you can really teams attack Trae on that end in a way that I don't think they really could Hardaway. And so I think that's an edge. I think Hardaway was definitely stronger. He finished a little better around the rim, could absorb contact and finish there. Trae's a better three-point shooter, even though he doesn't have the great percentage. Again, it's a bigger part of the game now.
Yeah. Well, he's playing that way in college too, so it just translated.
I think I would take Hardaway for ultimately. I mean, they're both very good passers. Trae might even be a better passer than Hardaway, but that's close. Hardaway was a great passer too. Yeah. I think ultimately I take Hardaway for two reasons. I think he was a better defender,
right,
and I think he was more efficient, particularly with inside the arc,
right,
which was more of his game. And so I'll take Hardaway for those reasons.
All right. Looks like there's a theme or a pattern developing with you. You got all your old school players lined up right now. You're making an all-star team of old school players, which
I'm showing my age.
You never know when we have guests on who they're going to go with. But Trae and Tim, I love both. I mean, I'm 5'11", so I could always relate to those guys, and I always admired what they could do for their size. But these next two players, really great wing players, play the same position, both champions, both have, I don't want to say controversial, but if you were to go into the NBA Finals with either of these players and you would have bets like, who's most likely to win MVP of the Finals, these guys' names probably would not come up above their teammates. I'm speaking about Jaylen Brown and Andre Iguodala. Who would you rather go with if you had to pick?
Yeah, I love both of those guys. I love their games. What I love about them is both of them contribute to winning in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And Iggy, to me, was like the perfect role player. Maybe I think of Brown as a little more because I guess typically role player, I don't love that term, but I think typically I think of like your first and second offensive options, and then kind of after that is like a role player. I don't know, maybe Chris Bosh in Miami would argue, there's some James Worthy with the Lakers. It's hard to call those guys role players, but
exactly.
I guess maybe it's more that Iggy didn't seek out his shot the same way that like a number one or two guy would. I think you have to give Iggy the edge on defense. I think Brown is a very good defender.
Right.
But Iggy won a Finals MVP in large part due to his defense on LeBron James, and you just can't argue with that, right? So I think he was a little longer. Iggy had really long arms.
Yes.
I think he had a little more reach. I would say he was the better passer. He was a really good passer. Rebounding, they're probably similar. I think on this one, I'm taking, again, it's close, but I'm taking Jaylen Brown because for his ability to get his own shot. I think that's the difference maker to me, that he can go and get his own shot. Iggy, he could create a little if he had to, but he was more comfortable as a spot-up guy. Early in his career with Philly, when he was young, they tried to make him the man, and it
didn't work out.
It didn't work out. It wasn't his game. I don't think Jaylen Brown is a number one guy, but he's proven to be a solid number two, and I think he's as I started off, he's very good at, he can do everything on the floor. He can rebound, he can pass. He is a very good defender. He can defend multiple positions. He can take the ball to the basket. He can shoot the three. I think the distinguishing factor to me is his ability to get his own shot.
Okay, so you're going with your first current day player.
There you go.
It took you long.
That
enough.
wasn't intentional. I didn't mean to. I wasn't just trying to throw you a curveball, but yeah.
So earlier you mentioned Run TMC. I mean, obviously you chose Tim Hardaway over Trae Young. Teammate of his, obviously retired, member of the Dream Team, Chris Mullin. I'm sure you have good memories of him being from New York.
Yeah.
And Klay Thompson. Who would you go? Who would you pick over who?
All right. Both incredible shooters, obviously. Right?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I think Mullin might have been a better shooter. I don't know. That's so hard. It's hard to say that anybody was better than Klay, but that lefty stroke was so pretty.
Yeah, it was.
I think Mullin was, we're talking before about being the guy, and it goes both ways. Klay obviously benefited greatly from playing with one of the greatest offensive players that's ever lived, right?
Yeah.
The greatest shooter of all time, a guy who doesn't just shoot, but finds teammates. So he didn't have to carry that burden of being the man. Whereas Mullin did. Mullin averaged like 25 points a game a few years back when guys didn't score as much as they do now, too. And I think Mullin was a better primary, like a better number one guy. He was slow as all hell, but was really good at navigating the pick and roll and using intelligence to create space for his beautiful shot.
Right.
Klay operated a little in the post, which Mullin never did. Passing, I think Mullin was the superior passer. And again, that goes to I think he was the better, primary playmaker again.
Right.
And might have been a little better rebounder than Klay. Neither were great rebounders. Defensively, Klay was, I think if you looked at the stats, you would think Mullin was the better defender. Mullin got a lot of steals.
Yeah, he did. I think he might have led the league one year, I think.
Did he?
I think.
But I still don't think he was a very good defender. He was, the steals, he had great hands, and I think off the charts IQ, so he anticipated very well. But in terms of a one-on-one defender, I think Klay was clearly superior at that. Okay. And Klay, Klay would even, Klay, they had Klay guard point guards in Golden State, because Steph wasn't going to guard anybody. So Klay, but obviously before the big injuries, I think Klay was a really good defender, probably an underrated defender. This is a really close one. Mullin had a little weird career too, because he had an alcohol problem early in his career.
Yeah.
And then he kind of I would say he got old young.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But he was so smart. Great instincts. I'm going to take Mullin again, I think, for the primary playmaking.
Yeah.
Over play. But that's a really tough one.
It is tough. I like Klay. I like Klay's size and defense. But all right, we're now down to our final comparison. This is one of our most recent episodes where we compared Scottie Pippen to Kawhi Leonard. Both champions, both small forwards, tremendous skill on both ends. But if you had to choose to start a franchise with, who would you go with?
So with both of those guys, I start with defense. Probably the two best wing defenders I've ever seen. There are other guys that come to mind. Bruce Bowen was a great wing defender. There are others. I think I take the two of them. The combination of length and quickness and athleticism. I mean, Kawhi, obviously, you think of his hands. But, Scottie Pippen, I remember he would go back to the 91 finals. After game one, the Bulls switched Pippen onto Magic, and he did as good a job as you could possibly do against Magic. And I've seen him just suffocate guys defensively. But same with Kawhi. And again, both could guard multiple positions.
Kawhi had LeBron shook. He got off the bench. Yeah. LeBron looked. He was like,
"Yeah, no, and that's you're talking about. If you can frustrate a Magic Johnson or LeBron James, then you're
doing something right.
All-time great defender, or a little before my time, like Michael Cooper, I think frustrated Larry Bird a little bit. Coop was another all-time great wing defender. That it's hard to say who is better on that end, Kawhi or Pippen. I think you could give that a wash. I think Pippen was a little more athletic than Kawhi, but I think Kawhi is more skilled.
Right.
And there's just incredible efficiency to Kawhi of just, I'm going to get to my spot, at the free throw line extended and turn around and knock down a shot over your face.
Yeah.
Pippen was a better passer.
Right.
So Pippen was better than Kawhi at kind of initiating an offense. Like if you wanted to kind of run a pick and roll and have him set up teammates and get other people involved in that kind of way, he was better.
Like a point forward. Yeah.
Yeah,
I can see that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. He was more of a point forward than Kawhi, but Kawhi is more of a natural scorer.
Okay.
Maybe not natural. He just made himself into a scorer.
So who are you going with?
I'm taking Kawhi because of the offensive efficiency. And again, the ability, as I've said with a lot of these, the ability to get your shot. The ability, Kawhi, you need a basket late in the game. Kawhi is more inclined to just get to his spot, knock down that shot. And I think he had to have had a higher shooting percentage than Scotty. Defense is a wash. I'll take Kawhi's scoring.
Cool, man. Well, you did not disappoint. You definitely stuck to your old school roots. I think you
Kawhi's
picked two.
Kawhi
two out of 10. I think it was it John? No, you picked John Wall. I forget who the. Let me look.
I'm
was
not
Jaylen
sure
Brown.
about
Jaylen Brown. It was Jaylen Brown.
The Mullen one. I might. If you ask me tomorrow, I might go the other way.
Okay.
Same with Jokic Duncan.
Yeah, that was tough. That's a tough one. To me, that's probably the top or the toughest one. So we're now toward the end of the interview, Paul, and before we give the final details about where and when and how much the book costs, I mean, all that good stuff you can share. I just want to give my personal piece on your first book, because we didn't talk about it. We talked about it in the first interview a couple months ago, but Knicks of the 90s, just so everyone thinking out there, like, man, am I really going to invest time into reading about Moses Malone? Don't just read it for the life story of Moses Malone, because Paul has a really great writing prose that, as a reader of fiction and nonfiction, the way you write your book and structure it with the chapters, the way you peel back layers of not just the life of the players before they make it to NBA superstardom, but when they're actually there. Like, that's a lot of people are going to want to invest time into, like, the behind the scenes stuff of playing for the Rockets, playing for the Sixers, playing against Larry Bird in the finals, things like that. You have a great writing style, and from one writer to the other, I just want to applaud you for that and give you all kudos for your first book, Knicks of the 90s. And obviously, I can't wait to read your next book. So that being said, Paul, tell us about the name of the book. Tell us again where we can find it, how much it is. Tell us all about it.
First of all, thank you, Uriah, so much for those kind words. It means a lot coming from you. Yeah, the book is it'll be available. It's out November 1st. You could pre-order it now on Amazon or Barnes & Noble would be the best place to pre-order. Once it's out, you could get it at any of your local bookstores. I'm really excited about it. I think it's a great book.
Yeah.
I'm not biased or anything. But yeah, what's fun about it is you delve into a lot of stuff beyond Moses, about, the economics of the league. And I get a lot into, like, why when they introduced the salary cap, and there's a lot of cool stuff in there about the ABA, if anybody's interested in the ABA, because Moses starred in the ABA.
That's right.
I alluded to some of the recruiting stories that went on with Moses are crazy. Okay. It is crazy what coaches offered him and those around him and how they harassed him. And that stuff's really good. There's great stuff if you're a sneakerhead on the Air Force Ones and just Nike's whole sneaker system. And so, and of course, plenty of Moses, but, the good stuff about his relationship with Olajuwon and Barkley, Iverson to some extent. And so, I hope everybody goes and checks out the book.
Yeah. Well, all of your information, links to your book and all that good stuff we'll put in the description of this podcast and obviously on our website. So, Paul, it's been great talking to you again. We didn't get a chance to talk about your Knicks. We'll talk about that maybe, offline on social media. And by the way, if you're searching for Moses Malone biography, it's Paul Knepper, Knepper. And go buy his book. It'd be a great Christmas gift. It's coming out in November. If you have a dad or brother or cousin or uncle, grandfather that loves the NBA or the ABA, get this Moses Malone book. It's going to be hot. So you can even pre-order it now. That being said, I'm Uriah with NBA Now and Then, the greatest comparisons. Thanks for chiming in, and we'll check you out next time. Peace.